Today I'm joined by the brilliant psychotherapist Julie Woodier. Julie is based in Middlesbrough in the northeast of England. Julie, how are you?
Good, thanks, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, I am okay, thank you. I am okay, not too bad. Trying to navigate my own way through this crazy situation. What about you, business-wise? How's things been?
At the moment, there's been a drop in clients to what I would normally see. I'm not working as many hours as I would normally, and that's purely because of working remotely now. So my work is either by telephone or Zoom, Skype, um, and for a lot of people, they just don't prefer to work that way. Some people can't because they haven't got the privacy in their own home. The kids are off school or the whole family's around, so they just haven't got that space um, to have a
Yeah.
private session.
Are you seeing a dramatic change in the way that someone's presenting to
Yeah,
you because of this situation?
yeah,
As you say, more people they're almost under each other's feet in their own
yeah,
house.
yeah,
So yeah, how does that compare?
yeah. So, and I have seen I've seen a change in how people are presenting. So, ordinarily, clients will come into therapy because of something that's happened in the past, has brought them to therapy, and they're wanting to work through that, so that they're able to live more comfortably in the present. What has changed over the course of the last 5, 6 weeks, um, people are very much in the now, what's going on now.
Right, right.
So
And does that change the way that you would work with someone as well, presumably? I mean, in terms of techniques that you use, do you use any in particular that have proven quite beneficial at the moment?
with the COVID, well, I think it's everyone's gone into the fight, flight, or freeze response. So everyone has gone into survival. So at the beginning, when the lockdown first started, or just the build up to that, you could see that everybody was starting to um, bulk buy, and it's them basic needs. Have they got enough food, water, shelter? Am I safe? Am I secure? All those basic survival needs were very much at the forefront of people's minds. And now, what I am recognising, 5 weeks in, um, I think people have got the basic needs sort of under control now, and they're starting to feel the loneliness and missing people, that lack of connection, and I
Right.
really think that's starting to show for people now. They sort of have settled down to the fact that this is how we're going to do our shopping, get all what we need.
Yeah.
But I think people are starting to miss that physical contact.
So you're observing that almost having this period of shock, I would
Mhm.
probably describe it, even speaking to clients of my own from a physiotherapy point of view.
Mhm.
Um, One of the most overwhelming uh, causes, I would suggest, of clients that I've spoken with that have pain in their body, whether it's back pain, neck pain, any part of their body, all of them can attribute that symptom to there being an emotional driver,
Mhm.
and I reflecting on those cases, I would suggest that we're all certainly previously in a state of shock.
Yeah.
So moving from shock into now, as you say, and the human being is brilliant at this, at adapting to the change in environment and the change in situation. It's phenomenal, really, how we've all gone about changing.
Mhm.
Um, we've accepted that we have to keep the social distancing. We're only going out for our dose of exercise once a day. But now we're almost trying to accept that this could be how we have to live. And for a lot of people, as you say, the feeling of loneliness starts to starts to build. So moving from that fight or flight mechanism, the sympathetic nervous system ramping up, can you explain how, perhaps mentally that can create change in someone?
And I think one of the biggest things with that is if they're in that fight, flight or freeze response, they're in that survival response, they'll start reaching for coping mechanisms that aren't always helpful. And it could be alcohol, drugs, self-harm, over or under eating, gambling. Boredom is not a great thing, for people who are bored. So they're turning towards what they would consider to be quite unhealthy ways of coping with this.
And it's a really interesting point you make there with respect to coping strategies, and whether you would generalize that as being a bad habit, that we're all guilty of having a bad habit, but I would also think that perhaps leading up to this whole situation where the virus has globalized, I actually think that we've become more vulnerable to not realizing what boredom's like anymore. We've gone for so long being able to have what we want when we want it, and then all of a sudden a lot of our choices have been taken away from us for the better good of everyone. And suddenly people are having to kind of acknowledge boredom again and think of how to deal with that. So you mentioned bad coping mechanisms, going through people's habits that they've got to be cautious of reverting perhaps back to. What would be some of the positive coping mechanisms that you would be suggesting to your clients?
So what I'm recognizing is obviously that a lot of them are feeling anxious, feeling stressed, helpless, and not knowing what to do, feeling out of control. And I think one of the biggest components with stress is that feeling of feeling out of control. So what I try and get them to do is look at what they can control. What can they do, as opposed to what they can't do. We have had a lot of our choices taken away from us, and rather than focusing on that, focus on what you can do. So bring yourself into the here and now, and what can you do? So the type of things that I will ask them, encourage them to do, is to do a daily routine, have a daily routine, some structure in your day. Try as best you can to follow a healthy diet, maybe introduce some mindfulness or meditation, yoga, something like that brings your focus into the here and now. Abdominal breathing, deep abdominal slow breathing, that'll help bring the left and right hemisphere of the brain into balance, which will soothe the system. So I know sometimes people think, people bang on about deep breathing and everything, but it really does work. It really does.
Very, very powerful. Very powerful.
It is, and it does soothe the system. And now I think is a great time to learn something new. And again, if you learn something new, whether that be learn to play an instrument, baking, knitting, crocheting, woodwork, gardening, whatever, try and make it something creative. Again, that focuses your mind and brings you into the present time. And when you're in the present time, it helps reduce the anxiety and helps to lift your mood.
That's some great advice. And what you'd mentioned there as well, and I read earlier this week, someone had composed a blog, and they'd mentioned that, again, with being bored perhaps more than ever during the day, for some of us, that's going to become a problem. Others would argue that they haven't got enough time in the day because suddenly they're trying to do work from home, they've got the children under their feet, they're trying to do homeschooling, and you have this pressure cooker situation, as I've discussed with other people, where everyone is in and around the same environment. And that is quite rare as well for people. Yes, you will spend time with each other, perhaps more so on a weekend, but never so much time consistently. And this blog outlined that it's okay to set time aside for yourself. You know, don't feel guilty for, you know, establishing perhaps with everyone that you live with that you do need some time on your own to self-care, and perhaps use one of the things that you've mentioned there. And that presumably, when you're helping someone to process the emotions they might be going through, is that quite paramount to be thinking, you know, give yourself some time as well?
Definitely, and especially at this time, and I think that's why it is important to have a daily routine or some structure in the day, especially for people who are trying to work from home and homeschool the children. It's a lot. It's a big ask. So all these things can just help deal with stuff like that. You know, relaxation. You know, listen to some soothing music and spend a little bit of time relaxing, or put some upbeat music on and get up and dance, move. All that helps lift your mood. It's important that you're connecting with people. You know, I usually ask my clients to maybe connect with somebody different each day, so you are having a different conversation with different people. And that is one of the beauties of technology now. You know,
it is.
We can connect. We can.
I mean, you know, and funnily enough, you and I, we were set to be meeting at some point this year to obviously discuss techniques and various skills that you and I both have, and sharing that. And, you know, we've ended up talking more now that we've got, you know, less option of doing it. It's fascinating. But the whole sense of loneliness, that emotion, the emotion of fear, the emotion of anxiety. Can you explain for people how some of those symptoms might arise? I mean, because for some people, and I would put my hand up and say that I'm guilty of this, I would quite often believe that I'm not stressed, but that's because the symptoms of me being stressed, I might be suppressing, I might be ignoring. What would be some of the symptoms that consistently people would be experiencing, that you would attribute that to them perhaps having a deep-rooted fear or an anger or an anxiety?
So sometimes that can display itself in physical symptoms. So, you know, people who suffer with IBS, things like that, eczema, psoriasis, you know, all things like that.
Low back pain.
Yeah, you know, the body keeps the score.
Yes.
Sometimes our body is trying to tell us something, but we're not listening. And I think this is a great time to connect, not just with other people, but to connect with yourself and just notice, you know, what's going on in the body.
Yeah, it's perhaps a good opportunity to to learn what your baseline behavior is. Someone else mentioned, you know, learn what your baseline behavior is, and you can therefore acknowledge when you're moving away from that, and what kind of techniques you can use to you know, bring it back in. What about in terms of
and also the emotion, you know, look at your emotions. What are you feeling emotionally? You know, recognize, are you feeling low? Are you feeling sad? Are you upbeat? You know, there is a lot of people that have recognized that their stress levels have actually dropped, because some of the stresses of daily life, of traveling to and from work, are no longer there. So they feel a lot calmer. But, you know, the home working, they switch the computer off, and they're at home. They haven't got that journey to and from work. Sometimes, not all workplaces are the nicest atmospheres to work in, and people aren't experiencing the unpleasantness of the office, or there's not, it's not all negative. There's a lot of people are realizing that what is no longer in their life, and that the stress levels have actually reduced.
It's a good point. Yeah, again,
The
very fact that for some people, this current situation might actually be more appealing. They don't have to battle through the drive, the commute to and from work, the stress that might bring about. They can just fall out of bed, perhaps, into hopefully a suitable working place, and be as productive, maybe even more productive than they would have been in the office. Really interesting. So if given the circumstances, say for example, as we mentioned about coping mechanisms and the potential for people to revert back to coping strategies that aren't good, let's say for example, they go back to drinking more excessively, obviously more alcohol. They might be even driven towards smoking again, or perhaps even recreational drugs of some kind. Your one of your brilliant skill sets is EMDR. So you just recently got your consultancy in EMDR. So congratulations on that. Well done.
Thank you.
For everyone else who's not familiar with EMDR, can you explain the background behind that technique in particular?
So EMDR is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And in a nutshell, what that means is quite often traumatic memories can get stuck and stored somewhere in the brain, and you can't get access to them, so they lay there dormant, and this can be triggered. And this is what PTSD is all about. That those past traumatic memories can be re-triggered at any point, and then you start re-experiencing the feelings associated to that from the past. Some people have flashbacks, nightmares, high levels of anxiety, hypervigilant, can't sleep. All those things can be re-triggered. So what EMDR does is it is what it says. It's eye movements, or we can use any bilateral stimulation. So it might be tapping, eye movements. Sometimes I'll use pulses, what people can hold in their hands, and there's the pulses that go left, right.
And in using those kind of techniques, and as you described there, the eye movement or tapping, pulsing, how does that, can you explain a bit more of the science behind that? How does that actually influence the behavior?
So what that does is, if one part of the brain, so when we experience something traumatic, it can be fragmented, and part of that can be stored in one part of the brain, and another part of the memory can be stored in another, and the two don't meet. So what the eye movements do, the bilateral stimulation, it'll get left-right brain talking to one another. So it reprocesses that memory and desensitizes it. So it's not wiping your memory. You might still remember that event occurred, but it desensitizes it. It takes the trauma out of it.
Right. That's fascinating. And presumably people going through the emotions that they are at the moment, as we discussed at the start, there's every possibility that people are still in a bit of shock. It's a very, very surreal situation.
It is.
Are you therefore thinking that we're going to move from that emotion of being in shock, fight or flight, parasympathetic nervous system driving us, into the potential of having more post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, appearing?
Most definitely, yeah. And I think now, you know, a lot of people are saying about these set of coping mechanisms. You know, I won't be the only person saying it, about it's so important to get the routine, do some mindfulness, healthy diet, exercise. All those things are so important because they are what will help you now cope in the here and now, so that hopefully some of this stuff doesn't develop into post-traumatic stress. And I think I don't think I have mentioned yet, the most important thing is your sleep.
Right, yes.
A restful night sleep, because during REM sleep is when our brain naturally processes all this stuff for us, and if we're not having restful sleep, that natural processing isn't happening, and this is where it could develop. You know, in the aftermath of this, there will be a lot of post-traumatic.
So something that's perhaps present as an acute trauma,
yeah,
can become something deep rooted the longer that it's not dealt with an appropriate coping strategy. So in terms of optimizing our sleep, you know, and again, it's a very, very well-researched area now, thankfully. But have you heard of Matthew Walker? Have you, you know, the neuroscientist, whose fabulous book, The Importance of Sleep, Why We Sleep, and you know, he really looks into it in depth and brings the science to it. What are your tips that you give people for trying to get the best quality sleep?
And it's the simplest of things. Turn your bedroom into a bedroom. So get rid of all the technology in there, you know, and when you go to bed to go to sleep. Try and get a routine so you go to bed around about the same time each night. Wake up the same time the next morning, you know, even if you've got nothing to get up for. And again, this goes back to having some structure into your day. You know, try and keep a good bedtime routine. Avoid caffeine, alcohol before you go to bed. Don't be doing anything that stimulates the brain too much. And just try and get a restful night's sleep. And I know during this time, you know, it's easier said than done, but I think it's really important that you're able to do that, because you know, we've got people who are at home and can't go out, and they're feeling the isolation, the loneliness, the boredom, and then you've got the key workers and the frontline staff who are you know, we're weeks into this now, and they're starting to get exhausted, they're getting overwhelmed. This is all about early intervention. So for the people who are at home, if they, you know, follow some of the tips that I've said, and I'm sure that they've heard plenty of people say those things, if they do that, that's their early intervention, so that at the end of this, they're not coming out of this with higher levels of distress that they had when they went into it. And what they're doing is that they're learning that they can be more resourceful, they can soothe their own systems, you know, and which is important, because, and then the key workers and the frontline workers, obviously there's different things happening with them. They can access support. There's lots of support around for them, so that they've got that early intervention, so that hopefully things don't develop into PTSD, you know. I've offered doing some voluntary work for the local funeral directors and their staff, you know, because their work, everybody's had to adapt the work to
absolutely
virus, you know. So all this early intervention stuff is really important. so that when we come out of this, you know, people aren't traumatized. There will be there will be trauma.
Yeah, I think sadly it's inevitable, isn't it, that there are going to be there's going to be an increase in the number of cases with mental health problems. You know, no doubt you'll be very busy at the point where you can be, but like you say there's also the positive to take from this is that bring into play a lot of these early interventions. Now, some strategies, coping strategies, as we keep saying, that a lot of people, I would suggest, would ordinarily not think of. They wouldn't ordinarily think of giving themselves time to do some breathing exercises. I mean, I don't know about you, but in my local area, there's more people out and about on the streets taking their daily exercise than there ever has been, which is brilliant. It's absolutely fantastic that having had that choice of when they can go out stripped away from them, people feel like they should take advantage of that now and at least have it, you know, their daily dose in the very case that gets taken away from them. So there are huge positives that we can all gain as human beings in adapting to this whole process. As you mentioned there, that will make us stronger, but also for the key workers, help to maintain their immune system, you know, getting that good night's sleep. It's obviously extremely difficult if you're a shift worker to actually come away from work, be trying to get a good night's sleep in the middle of the day, especially when we're blessed with such nice weather as well. But so very important. And as you say, routine, it's key, isn't it? You know, make sure the routine's there, stick with it, so you don't swerve off course and make yourself more vulnerable for, heaven forbid, if you catch the virus. You know, we want to be able to fight against it. So brilliant ideas. If you were to summarize then, if you wanted to give us your five key coping strategies that everyone would follow, that's going to make them less vulnerable, stronger from an immune system point of view anyway, what would they be, Julie?
They would be: have a routine, exercise, meditate, learn something new, do something creative, and sleep.
Yeah, brilliant.
Sleep. And if you do have if you had some structure in your day, you ate healthily, you did some regular exercise, did some something creative, did some meditation, by the time you go to bed, and keeping that regular bedtime routine, hopefully, you know, you'll sleep a little bit better, and then all that natural healing process takes place. And in a time where we feel out of control, we have no control over this. We don't know how long the lockdown's going to be for. We don't know how long it will be before we can actually have that physical contact again with other people, you know, all of those things. We don't know how long it's going to go on for. So if we can get a sense of that we have got some control and some choices over our daily routine, that can really help. And I think it's important that those that are indoors keep themselves well now, so that those that are on the front line, when their time comes, we're all fitting well enough to look after them. That's a lovely point to make. I think, as you say, if we at the very least can control our lifestyle now, the choices that we're making to keep us healthy, then we can offer the same support that those key workers are offering those now that are in need of it. Fantastic. Some great points, Julie. Thank you so much for your time. Very much appreciated. I'll no doubt be back in touch with you very soon to have another good natter about things.
In the meantime, I hope you keep well, you and your family. Take care and keep safe.
Take care. Thanks, Rob. Speak to you soon. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye now.
Bye-bye.